They say nothing in life is certain except for death and taxes. But if you live in Mississippi, you can probably throw in bad weather too. Whether they're hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, or ice storms, there's just about always something we can count on. But we've also been able to count on one person and his staff to get us through these crises. Robert Latham served as the executive director of the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency under 3 governors, and that is until he decided it was time to go home. Mr. Latham retired at the end of January 2016, leaving some mighty big shoes to fill. Robert, welcome to Conversations.
Thank you, Marshall. It's great to be here.
I got to say this right off the top of the bat. You're terrible at retiring. You really are.
Yeah.
Because this is our second or third retirement show on you, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess if you count military and then Social Security, it's 4.
4? Okay, so that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, just I'm a slow learner, so it just takes me a while to figure it out. So I guess that's why I came back.
Well, your wife Charlotte probably will be very happy to see you home this time.
She is, and that's one of the reasons that, we just we've decided it's time for us to enjoy life, and that's what we want to do.
Good deal, good deal. But your service to the state has been fantastic. You've been there during so many crises, around 50 emergency declarations.
More than 65 state of emergencies.
I see. I lost track because I had to take my shoes off and count.
And 16 presidential disaster declarations.
Wow.
Including the last one we had this Christmas.
This Christmas, and that was tornadoes.
Tornadoes in North Mississippi.
And tough. And it never gets any easier, does it?
No, it doesn't get any easier. I think it's just really tough. I mean, and tornadoes always, especially, find a way to hit those people that can least afford it. And but for me, I mean, one of the most rewarding things is being able to go, with the governors that I've been with and walk the streets of people who have just lost everything, and they don't know, what tomorrow is going to bring. There's just a loss of hope and sense of just uselessness. But to somehow say, you know what, I've seen this before, but it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most rewarding thing about this job.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you'll agree with this sentiment. I always go around telling people that when things get bad, we get good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've done it better than anybody in your cartoons, and I think that, and I don't think you realize just how uplifting that is. I mean, I know some of your political cartoons are just
at
the right time. They're at the right time, but in the disaster cartoons, just always seem to be so uplifting. And I think I don't know of any way or anybody that could capture that and the Mississippi character as well as you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I guess we'll start with the future before we get to the past. What's next for you?
The last time I retired in 2006, I went right into consulting, and I started with 1 or 2 jobs and signed with 2 or 3 companies, and then it was 3 or 4 more. And I woke up one day, and I was just had a lot of companies I was under contract with. I enjoyed it. It was just awesome. But I was traveling more, was gone more than I had been when I was working. So this time it's going to be maybe a little bit of that on the side, but I think just more importantly, find something for me where I can volunteer and help people and continue to try to make a difference in people's lives. Because my philosophy at MEMA, it always has been, when you get up every day, you have an opportunity or several opportunities to change somebody's life that day. And don't miss those opportunities because you might not get them again.
I can see how you would be good as a consultant considering the breadth of disasters that we face here in Mississippi. And we face everything from earthquakes to ice storms to floods to tornadoes to hurricanes. I mean, you've got a pretty wide resume so far.
Yeah, we have, unfortunately, we seem to be a very disaster-prone state, and it's just unfortunately nothing we can do about it. It's human nature. And it's, I think that because of that, we do have a lot of experience, and I think we should be proud of how far as a state that we've come. But more importantly, and I think you saw this in Katrina in your cartoons, is the resiliency and character of the people of this state. That's one of the things that kept me going. I learned as much as anybody else in my career in this job, is the character of this state. And I can tell you, the week after Katrina, and I was on the coast, I slept there on the ground with folks and not sure where I was going to eat that day, and spent a whole week down there before Governor Barbour brought us back to Jackson. But, I just honestly said, how do you get up and look at this every day and move on? And, I just really sold our people short. I mean, you look at what's happened down there and how resilient those people are. I mean, it's amazing, and it's taught me a lot about this state and about myself and what you should expect out of people who are determined.
I was there at the 10th anniversary celebration for the first responders, and that was joyous. Former President Bush came, and I mean, it was just a really wonderful event. And the war stories that people were still telling. And one of the things that I discovered on the coast, that people's like, okay, we want to mark this anniversary. Now we're ready to move on.
I think that was important for that 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
You know, we have spent 10 years living Katrina, and the people on the coast, I mean, living it every second of every day.
Right.
But I think they were to the point, and we all are. Not that we want to forget it.
Sure.
But, you know, it really is time to move on. And I think when you look at what's happened on the coast, it's evident that they've moved on. They're bigger,
amazing.
they're better, they're stronger. The people have come back, and it's a coast that's flourishing.
Definitely on that. Talk about that time period, that storm, because I mean, of all the 65 disasters that have been declared, that one has to be the king of all of them.
Yeah, you know, I've told people a lot about people in this business spend their whole life getting ready for the monster storm or the monster event, and very few people ever get to experience that. And I say this seriously, fortunately for me, I did. And fortunately because it taught me a lot. I learned a lot about ourselves and our state, about the leadership, Governor Barbour, local officials who have got us back to where we are. And I think that we should be really, really proud of that. But there were some really dark days, I mean, after Katrina, and some of the people I encountered on the coast that first week and the weeks after that, people I talked to, the reefer trailer that I had to buy for a morgue. And I tell emergency management directors all the time, let me tell you something. You think all this stuff is just going to happen and that ain't your job? When somebody throws something in your lap, you have two options. You can either throw it back in their lap or you can do something about it. And that was one of those experiences where I just felt like, you know what, you just got to do something. And, you know, just by the fate of God, you know, a guy drives up in an ice truck that he'd deliver a load of ice, and we bought that trailer for $25,000 and was able to give it to the funeral home director for a morgue. So, you know, those kind of things that happened after Katrina, that's why I say it taught me a lot about myself. I mean, you can make all of this about a bureaucracy. You can let that bog down progress, but we didn't let that happen, and it was because people found creative ways to find solutions to problems. It was people helping people.
One of the things I noticed after Katrina was that anybody who had a plan suddenly was paralyzed because that plan got blown away. I mean, everybody sat down and planned for Camille.
Yeah.
And this was just a totally different, wider scope disaster. And really, I think history is going to smile at MEMA's response. I know y'all had some serious challenges. I know FEMA got beat up on some things, but MEMA really, for the most part, but I mean, you were suddenly without communications, you know, the cell phones weren't working, there was all kinds of things. And for the past decade, y'all have basically sat down and figured out, okay, this is how we're going to do it differently. So would you say that we're ready for another type Katrina storm?
I think our mindset is prepared us for that next event. I mean, I think our capability that we built at every level of government, the fact we brought the private sector in, they're part of this process now, they're not outsiders. We finally realized everything government needs is in the private sector.
That's right.
So they're now at the table. We provide them seats in our state EOC. They get situation reports. And you know, it's important, I think, for government to find out what the private sector needs to get back up and running, because what drives a government is the tax base that's there. In cities, it's the sales tax. Well, if businesses aren't up and running, people are not working, there's no tax being generated. And that becomes an obstacle to the recovery. So now we realize everybody has to be at the table on the front end, not, you know, after it's happened.
I noticed, I had Governor Barbour on talking about the experience, and he was talking about, you know, that y'all had learned a lot from even Walmart, how they had responded and so forth. But you also, the state of Florida was an incredible help too, because they had gone through that season of 4 hurricanes in a row, major hurricanes in a row. So you had a lot of help coming from all around, didn't you?
I did. And, you know, in the year before with the 4 hurricanes in Florida, 2004, we actually sent people, you know, Jasper Welch, who still works for me, sent him to Florida, and he was there working in a local EOC. And I sent him down there and said, go down there, because Florida was kind of the model of how you handle hurricanes. And I always felt like we did okay, but I knew that there was a lot more we could do. So I said, find out how they do things. So they brought some stuff back, and we incorporated those things into our planning initiatives and our response plans. And it believe it or not, the next year Katrina comes along and we implemented some of those things, such as the search and rescue teams that we had collected from the round of the state, sent 19 of them to the Gulf Coast to help local fire departments just search the rubble for the remains of those who had been killed by the storm. I mean, so we learned a lot. And I think Katrina itself taught us a lot. You know, I think now we have, by and large, addressed all of those gaps and shortfalls. But we used to always do exercises to test plans, but we would never push the plan to break because we didn't want to do that.
Right.
You know, if you break your plan's not good enough. But now it's important, I think, to push the plans so they do break, so you know where the break point is.
Right.
Because if that's what's going to happen in a catastrophic event.
Well, and we've had that since Katrina. We had the tornadoes that hit, like for instance, Smithville.
Yes.
I mean, EF5 tornado.
Yes.
How can you respond to that? You know,
That's right.
that's hard to plan for.
That's right.
So you've had lots of experience even since Katrina.
We have, and the response capability, both in manpower, the search and rescue system that we've built statewide that uses all those assets that are out there,
Yeah.
that are already there. It's
Right.
just that now we have them structured in a way we can deploy them.
Yeah.
And all of the stockpiles of water and tarps and MREs and stuff that we keep at MEMA, the contracts we have in place for simple things like hauling gasoline, which we couldn't get during Hurricane
Right.
Katrina. So all these things that are now in place that weren't there during Katrina. So, you know, I think as a government, we're better prepared. If we could just get the piece where individuals and families and communities are prepared, we'd be where we need to be.
That's a very important part of this, because I think a lot of people forget. They think that somebody's going to come in and swoop in and save them. They really need to have about 3 days worth of supplies on hand, don't they?
They do. And I think what we've been trying to push is this community-based preparedness. You know, somehow we got away from taking care of our neighbors and
Right.
then relied on government to come in and fix everything.
Right.
Government by nature is very bureaucratic. It's like turning a battleship. You could eventually do it, it just takes forever. You know, but people living next door to somebody else who has a need can meet that need pretty quick.
Yeah.
We've got to get back to where communities own these disasters. And that, I think the preparedness piece is just as important as the post-disaster. So if we've got that kind of relationship before something happens, there's a lesser reliance on our government that may or may not be able to do what the private sector and just average citizens can do.
You know, and it's not just for hurricanes, because I mean, a tornado can come through and hit your community, or an ice storm can cripple your community. I mean, and the fact that we're even prone to earthquakes here, people don't know that. I mean, the New Madrid Fault can hit North Mississippi and take out most of our infrastructure. So it's really important to have that, isn't it?
It is, and you know, I think that's probably the one scenario that scares me more than anything is a New Madrid earthquake. Because if you look at history in 1811, 1812, series of earthquakes, actually several big ones and thousands of aftershocks that made the Mississippi River flow backwards and all of that. It's horrifying to think of that possibility, but I think that's probably the one biggest threat to not only our communities, but the economic security of this country, because a New Madrid earthquake in the central U.S. to interrupt the major supply lines that run east, west, north, or south would be catastrophic to this country.
We have an incredibly large number of gas pipelines, for instance, that run through Mississippi.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we forget about these things.
They rupture, water lines rupture, sewer lines rupture. So all those things we take for granted may or may not be there after an earthquake.
So you spent a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah, you know, it's going to be nice to have one phone instead of two. And it's going to be nice to be able to sit down and have dinner with my wife or go to a movie and not have to run out and answer the phone, respond to an email. You know, and I'm not complaining, because you know what, that's just what this job called for, and it's been so rewarding. I have no regrets professionally. If I had it to do all over again, I'd make the same decisions professionally that I made. So I mean, I think that's a sign that you've been successful and that you've got an agency that even in your absence functions as if you were there. And I feel good about that.
So let's talk about that career, because when you were 18 years old, did you ever anticipate sitting in this chair right
Well, I
now?
was going to pre-med. I was going to be a doctor.
You're going to be a doctor.
Yeah, you know, so I mean, I went to Northwest Community College, majored in pre-med, and figured out real quick, this ain't gonna work. I tell people all the time when I sign something, they look at my signature and they say, that's your signature? I say, yeah, it's the only class in college I passed in pre-med was the signature part. But it's interesting, I went from that to physical therapy, and then I joined the military and had a 27-year career in the Guard, and that's not the way I planned it. I started out in retail business, managing fridge stores, and that was early in my life. But then I kind of got into the fire service only because they asked me to be on their softball team, and then 4 years after that, I was the chief of that department for 18 years, and then the ice storm of '94, and 3 weeks before that happened, I had become the county emergency management director.
In Tate County.
In Tate County, and then we had this ice storm, and all heck's breaking loose, and I'm sitting there and everything's, going south on me real quick. And I said, well, I got this plan here. I know there's something I need to be doing. And I opened it up and started, I said, wow. And almost every decision I made during that storm was the wrong decision. Opened up a National Guard armory, and we had the Baddour Memorial Center, which is a center for mildly retarded adults in Senatobia, and they had lost power. So I said, look, no big deal. Let's move them to the Guard. 250 residents plus staff. Bring them there. We sleep them. A little while, power will be back on. Everybody go back. And it wasn't long after that, they activated the Guard. The Guard needed the armory. I had 250 people sleeping on the floor. The hospital lost power. Their backup power was a 5 kW generator, might run one light bulb. Every decision I made during that ice storm was the wrong decision. So it's kind of got me to where I am now.
So you got all the mistakes out of the way early.
Yeah,
exactly.
I did. And I tell people all the time, that's why that planning is so important.
Yeah.
I'd been there 3 weeks, hadn't had much time to get my feet on the ground, but understanding and war gaming what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I tell young emergency managers, I say, if you want to find out what you need to be prepared to do, pick up the newspaper every day, find one of those bad situations that's happened in some city, some county. You could look at the water situation in Flint, Michigan right now, whatever.
Yeah.
What if this happened in your community? What would you do? And I tell people war game that all the time, because those things that you don't expect are the ones that are going to come from left field and catch you off guard, and you're not going to be ready for it.
If you're in the middle of a crisis, it's good to have that to muscle memory.
It is.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it really is.
Absolutely.
Now, how did Governor Musgrove find your number? How did he give you the call?
Well, it's interesting because Governor Musgrove was our senator from North Mississippi, and he was an attorney, trial lawyer. My mother was a court reporter for Chancery Court Judge Leon Hannaford, and so she met Musgrove in the court system, and then he was from Batesville, Panola County. I was from Senatobia, so we had gotten to know each other just that. And then during Ice Storm '94, I really got to know him. And of course, he got to become lieutenant governor. And about 1999, I guess we started talking because the State Association of Emergency Management knew that I knew Governor Musgrove. And said, well, if he runs for governor, we need to try to make a change at MEMA. So he had promised that if he became governor, that would happen. And so, his election was determined by the House because he didn't have more than 50% of the vote.
Right.
Okay? So the last meeting I had with him in like November after the election in 1999, I'd been to Batesville to meet with him. Said, now the association said you had made a commitment to make a change at MEMA, and they just want to know if you're going to honor that commitment. He says, I promise you, we will make a change there.
Wow.
Got up to walk out of his office, and he said, have you thought about moving to Jackson? I said, no. No, I had not thought. He said, you might ought to go have that discussion with your wife.
Wow.
And then when it was decided, he called me, and so I came down here in January of 2000 and with him, and so that's how I wound up here. And like I tell people, especially kids that are in college now, just you think you've got your career plan out in front of you, but don't be afraid of those opportunities that come out of left field, because that's what happened to me.
Yeah, you didn't seize up or lock
I
down
didn't
on
plan
any
for
of
it
them.
at all.
Yeah.
I figured I'd still be in Tate County right now, being a fire chief and a county emergency management director.
Well, there's still time.
Not happening, Marcia.
Here.
Not happening. I'm too old.
I'm really pushing for a third show.
No,
okay, I
not
want to
gonna
get one.
happen.
Okay, on that. Well, you survived. You did something that's really kind of tough to do. You survived the transition from a Democratic governor's, to a Republican governor. And I mean, while both governors had their strengths, there probably weren't two different people than Ronnie Musgrove and Haley Barbour. But Haley Barbour kept you on.
Yeah, that was really interesting because Governor Musgrove had been really, really good to me, and he enabled me to go at MEMA and just make the changes that we needed to make there.
Yeah.
We had 4 presidential disasters in 2001, which really got my feet on the ground.
Yeah.
And we had set a goal during Musgrove's first term because only half of our counties had emergency management programs. So I said, by the end of the first term, we're going to have one in every county. And we did that by the end of his 4-year term. And we had gotten funding for the State Emergency Operations Center. So we had done all that.
Yeah.
But, I said, Governor Barber, I had never met Governor Barber. I just said, well, we might as well start making plans to go back to North Mississippi because this is just not going to work out. I mean, it's politics.
Yeah.
And I was fine with that. And he calls me just a few days before Christmas. And he said, Robert, he said, I've talked to a lot of people in this state, and you got a lot of friends. And he said, I want you to stay on as emergency management director. And
Wow.
I mean, and I think at that point I realized that governors understand that this job
Yeah.
shouldn't be political.
I'm about to say tornadoes don't care whether you're
They don't
Republican or
care.
Democrat.
They really don't.
Yeah.
And so it was just really a shock to me. And like I said, all 3 governors that I've worked for have just been unbelievable to me, and given me so many opportunities. And being with them in the inner circle and seeing how things work, it's been a great experience. I just wouldn't take anything for having worked for all 3 of them because I've learned something from every one of them, and it's just been a wonderful opportunity.
Well, it's almost like The Godfather, who just when you thought you were out, they called you back in.
Well, Governor Bryant, he called me like 6 days for the inauguration in 2012. And I thought he was just calling, I had known him ever since he was state representative, and was really involved with him in the fire service because I was a county fire coordinator. He spoke to the county fire coordinators a lot at the State Fire Academy. So, I knew him, but worked with him, he was a state auditor during Katrina. It was such a shock, and I thought, well, he just asking me what I think about MEMA, and he asked me to come back for the transition, and you just don't tell a governor no. That's just something you don't do. So I came back with the intention of staying 6 months, 12 months, helping with the transition, trying to get things back on track. And this past year, I woke up and I said, it's been 4 years, so transition should be over by now. So I went and met with him 2 or 3 months ago and told him I just thought I was going to retire again. And he really, he asked me to stay. And he said, but I totally understand why you want to do this. And he's just been a great governor to work for. He was out of office a little while ago and just kind of giving me a good send-off. And it's like I said, there are very few people who had the opportunities and experience I have. I just wouldn't take $1 million for them.
Now, you and I've had the opportunity to draw you in cartoons.
Yes.
I've done that before. A couple of them that you really liked. And also got the chance to work with MEMA. I'm working on a project to help kids learn about disaster preparedness, which I have to say was incredibly rewarding.
It was. And that kids campaign of trying to educate kids and try to change the cycle. Because as much as we talk about disaster preparedness, we really never changed the end result, and that is a better preparedness in our families. But the fire service over the years has been pretty good at educating kids about stop, drop, and roll. Every kid knows what that means. But with tornadoes and hurricanes and floods, kids aren't educated about that. And we've worked real hard to try to find a way. And we've developed this kid campaign with your help and the characters that we have. And the First Lady, Deborah Bryant, has been to read to a lot of these children and read the book about disaster preparedness, and Delta the Disaster Dog, Pearl the Preparedness Pup, Jake the Mitigation Wheel. All these people, Shaky the Earthworm, and those kids really get into that. So our hope is that, over a period of time, and it could take a generation, that this preparedness will be instilled in these kids, and maybe we can start changing the outcome of disaster preparedness. And it's been a good campaign for us, and you did a great job with that. Like I said, it's a hit everywhere. We had them at the Capitol. We had the characters at the Capitol this morning, so yeah, it was great.
Did any of the legislators get scared and run out when they saw the?
No, I just one of them asked what is all this, and I said, well, this is part of our kids campaign. He said, well, I guess they're at the appropriate place.
Oh, that's excellent. Perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, I did one cartoon when you retired the first time, and I said that FEMA was delivering the ice kind of late, but that's okay.
Be
It
here
was
2
fun.
weeks. It'll be here in 2. Yeah, the retirement party, and we'll bring the ice. It'll be here in 2 weeks.
So you remember my cartoons better than I do.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely on that. So, but like you said, you're going to go kick back, do a little fishing, enjoy a little time, do some travel, right?
I am going to do that, and you know, I don't think you get this out of your blood. I don't think it.
Yeah.
People like me, and I just don't think you. I don't think you can turn it off like a water faucet. So, you know, I'm going to try to ease out of it, but try to do a little consulting just to keep my hands in it, and hopefully be able to help somewhere where I can. I hope
Yeah.
so.
It's and you know, there's always plenty of opportunity here in Mississippi to help.
There's always a disaster here, unfortunately.
It is. But like we said before, when things get bad, we get good.
We do get good.
We really do.
We
So
do.
That's good. Any final thoughts on your career?
No, you know, I like I said, I think when you can look back on your career, and I tell people this all the time, that don't get discouraged when you start trying to measure your success a day at a time or a week at a time, or sometimes even years. It's hard to do that. Wait until the end, and then you look back and see, you know, how far you've come. And I think that's the measure of your success. And I will just tell you this little story, and then I'll quit. When I first came down here, I was living in a motel. My wife was up there. She had to sell the house. I'd been here a week. I'm trying to get my arms around this state agency that I don't even understand. And about a week after being down here, I'm on the way back to the motel, called my wife, and she said, well, babe, how's it going? I said, let me tell you something. I think I have made the worst mistake of my life. She said, what? I said, I don't know about this. And that was the advice I gave Lee Smith, and I said, look, enjoy the ride. Don't be afraid, because it's just going to take you some time to get your arms around it, but enjoy it, because it can be fun. You can do so much good. I wouldn't change anything, Marshall. It's been a great ride.
Robert, man,
Thank
good
you,
luck in
Marshall.
retirement.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you for everything you've done for us, and I appreciate it. It's been a great ride.
You're very welcome.
Been a great ride.
Those of you at home, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Conversation.